Hi, I'm Alan Page, former professional football player, member of the Minnesota Supreme Court, children's book author. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up.
Twice retired, first from football and more recently from the law, Alan Page isn't quite done yet.
I don't know what this thing called retirement means.
A serial achiever in his football career, first as an All-American at Notre Dame in the late 60s and 15 years in the NFL in the 70s and 80s as an All-Pro defensive lineman and member of Minnesota's feared Purple People Eaters. Alan Page hasn't let football define his life.
As a football player, that's what I did. I played football. That's not who I was. So you prepare as best you can for life after pro football.
Welcome to Nextracks, a user's guide for the 50-plus, navigating this new life stage, formerly known as retirement. I'm former ABC and PBS News correspondent Mike Cerre, in search of the most inspiring and revealing transition stories to help me and others who aren't quite done yet figure out what we're going to do when we finally grow up. I hope you'll subscribe to our podcast, check out our videos, resources, and related news stories, and send us your Nextrack stories to our website, www.nextracks.tv. Alan Page, former NFL All-Pro lineman, former Minnesota State Supreme Court Justice, co-founder of an education foundation, and now purveyor of fine maple syrup. But will the real Alan Page please stand up?
Well, the real Alan Page hasn't been invented yet.
Oh, it's still a work in progress?
It's a work in progress.
Well, listen, I got to make a confession. I've wanted to do this interview and meet you for over a half a century, since I was a starry-eyed freshman at Notre Dame, and you were the upperclassman All-American football player, national championship. And I would see you from afar, never get to meet you up close and personal, and it's a real honor for me.
Well, thank you.
And I got to thank my cousin Mary O'Brien, who you see every morning walking around the Lake of the Isles here in Minneapolis, for kind of putting us together. So we're keeping it all in the family.
Well, you know, we have a good thing going here.
Yeah. So what do you have against retirement? You retired twice, and it sounds like you may even retire again. What's up with retirement?
I don't know what this thing called retirement means. Life goes on simply because one career ends. Does that mean we stop?
Well, as a pro football player, you knew retirement was going to be fairly imminent. You weren't going to do 50 years as an NFL football player. So,
well, you know that your career has certain time limits. You don't know when or how, but you know that short term, and it's hard to think of at this stage 15 years being short term, but you know, at some point it's going to end. Mm-hmm. And so you prepare as best you can for life after pro football, just as there was life before pro football.
Did you find it more difficult retiring from football or retiring from the law?
I don't know that either one was particularly difficult. Both of them were anticipated. Both of them, the football didn't have a specific end date, but I was ready to move on. And the law, my time with the Supreme Court, had a specific end date because of mandatory retirement. Mm-hmm. So it didn't come as a shock.
Looking back on some of your football colleagues, was retirement really a dirty word and a hard thing that they faced that loomed on them, and they were having a hard time adjusting to life after football?
I think for a lot of professional athletes, whether it's football or basketball or baseball, whatever, the sport becomes their life. And they see themselves as that athlete. And they're also striving to achieve, whether it's more notoriety, more wealth, more something in the sport. I done most of what could be done on a football field. And so it wasn't that much of a difficulty for me.
What are your preconceived notions about retirement, having grown up in Canton, Ohio?
You know, I think the view back then was retirement was you didn't have to go to work anymore. And mind you, some of that labor was pretty hard. And so the idea that you wouldn't have to get up, at whatever time in the morning to put in 8 hours in a hot, dangerous steel mill.
Are you a golfer? Are you a fisherman? Or
I'm neither. I don't golf. I don't fish. I used to be a runner. I'm now a walker. And that, in terms of hobbies, if I have any, that's number one on my list. I want to get out and go for a walk every day.
Well, we talked earlier, and I kind of pressed you as to how did you figure out the new directions you were going to go, the next tracks you were going to make. You were saying that it's kind of work in progress, and you will discover that if you're not going forward, you're not growing.
If you're not making progress, you're going backwards. If you're not, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally, whether it's intellectually, if you're not growing, you're stagnating. And I don't know that when I was younger being either a child or even in my 20s or 30s, that I had any preconceived notions of what life would be like and what I would be doing. Although early on I figured I understood that I had an interest in the law, but that was about it. And grew up with the dream of becoming a lawyer, not knowing what lawyers did, not understanding what the law was all about, but having a sense that the law was a place that hopefully I could do some good, make a contribution.
Looking back on all your diverse accomplishments and the challenges you had in your professional careers, your many professional careers, you don't seem like the type of person who's daunted by putting yourself out there and trying something new and kind of exposing what you don't know.
One of the things that has driven me is the fear of failure. And the only way you can overcome that fear is by putting yourself out there to face it.
But some people will say, why do you have to do that? You've had a very successful, very successful careers, but why do you have to keep pushing out there and trying something new or getting involved in something new?
What's the point of life? I mean, what else do we do? I have this sense that given the blessings, if you will, that I have received, that I have some obligation to try to pay back, to create opportunity for others like the opportunities I've had.
Did it come kind of organically, or did you have to really do some homework and really think and focus about what you might want to do to contribute?
Well, I think fundamentally it comes organically, that you want to do something. Then you sort of sort out what it is you want to do, and then it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort.
The idea of mentoring kids, helping them get into college, helping them with their past, was that pretty organic? Did that come pretty natural to you, given your long history of concern about education and equal opportunity?
The Page Education Foundation, which we started some 35 years ago, back in 1988, was a natural for us. And I say us because Diane was as important, if not more so, in its creation.
Your late wife. And
My late wife.
And she was a marketing executive, so she really brought a lot to the table.
She brought a lot to the table, The foundation does a couple of things. One, it provides financial assistance to young men and women of color here in Minnesota. That is important. But more importantly, we require our grant recipients, we call them paid scholars, we require them to serve young children kindergarten through 8th grade as tutors, mentors, and role models.
Being the kind of serial achiever that you are and looking for something else to do, so you take it a step further and you become a book author and publisher. Did you ever think that was in your wheelhouse?
I never would have guessed that one. I never would have anticipated that one. But again, I talk about Diane's role and how important she was and how visionary she was. The children's books were her idea. I said, aha, we could do this together. I became we. So my daughter Cammie and I, we set about learning how to write children's books.
And they always say, you want a good book title, it's got to be very short, sweet, and to the point. And yours?
Alan and his perfectly pointy and possibly perpendicular pinky. That's, I suppose, not short, but it's to the point.
Yeah.
And
people get the message.
People get the message, and I should introduce the audience to Alan's perfectly pointy, impossibly perpendicular pinky.
Now, that was a way to connect with the kids, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And once we learned the formula, if you will, I mean, I had done some writing before because as a Supreme Court justice, do a lot of writing, but that doesn't necessarily translate to writing children's books.
Did you find it more challenging connecting with some 3rd and 4th graders listening to your book readings, or to some defendants or plaintiffs or prosecutors?
As I noted earlier, over the last probably almost 60 years, I spent time in schools and classrooms talking with young children. It's talking with young children is like talking with anybody else. You treat them with respect. You don't talk down to them. You don't talk at them. You have a conversation with them.
So, football, law, Supreme Court, Education Foundation, books.
Books,
And now you're a purveyor of fine maple syrup. Tell me about how you got into making maple syrup. Have you always been fascinated with maple syrup, or you fascinated with the environment you live in that you could make maple syrup?
I'm fascinated with maple syrup in the sense of eating it, having it on waffles, having it on pancakes. You hear about it. You like syrup, don't we all?
Has it turned into something more than just a little hobby as the process of going out into the woods, being at that sugar shack in the woods? Has it kind of grown into something even more important than you thought it would be?
Oh, I think, I call it a hobby, but it becomes part of your life. Going through the process, and I can't explain or articulate this very well, but tapping the trees, collecting the sap, bringing it back and boiling it, and sitting and watching sap boil. There was a time when I would have thought, why would anybody do that? But to sit and watch and smell the changing aroma of what starts off appearing to be basically water, watch it change color, watch the way it boils change.
Do you think it's as good a metaphor or illustration of how our interests change over the years? Would you have ever imagined yourself as a 30-year-old sitting there watching a pot of maple syrup boil? It'd be fascinating.
I would not have imagined myself doing that.
People might be surprised to learn that the former Purple People eater is now a purveyor of fine foods, namely sausages and maple syrup.
They would like me to share some syrup with them. I think they would like that.
They like the syrup. Yeah.
They'd like the syrup.
Yeah, yeah. So the succession of things that you've done, do you think there's several more in your case here to release that you want to do? I mean, are you exploring for other things, or now do you feel late 70s you got to dial it back a bit?
Well, I like to say I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. We're working on a project to try to ensure a quality public education for all children in the state of Minnesota, doing that by amending the Minnesota Constitution. That is a project which is left unfinished.
It sounds like a daunting challenge, changing the Constitution of the state.
Well, it is, but ensuring that every child has the opportunity to learn, creating a fundamental right to a quality public education is something that I think will create the opportunity for every child to learn.
Given the time horizons we all have now, our longevity and whatever, do you fear that you'll run out of time to accomplish this last ambition?
It doesn't matter. I can't worry about that.
You just got to get it going.
You got to try to make it happen. And if I run out of time, I run out of time.
What about other people who are trying to go through these transitions as well, and they say, I can't really figure out what I want to do? You start an educational foundation, but how easy is it for someone just to go in and sit in a class and help a school teach?
There's no magic to this. And there's sometimes a sense that you have to be somebody special to get things done. Well, that may be in the sense of a matter of degree, but not in the sense of being able to accomplish and create change. I'm one who, in my relationship with Diane, I was the procrastinator. She was the doer. And at the end of the day, all we have to do is act.
Would it be fair to say, and maybe not too personal, based on what you've been telling me, is that probably the most difficult transition for you is doing it solo without your wife?
That would be fair to say. It has been the most difficult thing I've had to do. But, she would say, you can't get anything done sitting there worrying about or thinking about or obsessing about my absence. You have to act.
So having been in the game all the years, on the gridiron, Supreme Court, and whatever, what's it like being on the sidelines cheering other people on in their pursuits? You're out there. Tell us about being out there with your sousaphone.
Every first Sunday in October, they hold the Twin Cities Marathon, and it comes by about a half a block away from my doorstep. And even back when we were running, I never ended up running the Twin Cities Marathon, so we would get out and cheer the runners on. Every year I'd bring the sousaphone down and use it to help cheer on the runners.
And do you ever mind being on the sidelines and not in the game?
As I say, from my vantage point, I'm in the game. I'm not running down the street, but I'm participating by cheering others on. And that is as rewarding because you're contributing to the experience. And it's an experience for me.
Somebody else is out there trying to accomplish their goal and their hopes and dreams.
And in some small way, maybe not in a big way, but in some small way, I'm contributing to that.
What are your best transition tips for others?
My best transition tips for others would be, don't sort of obsess about having a plan necessarily. If you've got one, that's fine. But don't try to fit everything into the box. Take it as it comes and take it as far as you can as it comes. We talk about legacy and what that means. Well, I'm a believer that the people we touch along the way carry part of us with them. And so if I can lift the spirits of some runner, they carry that with them. That's good enough.
So is it hard to pin down Alan Page's legacy? Let me see, NFL, All-Pro, State Supreme Court Justice, education founder, book writer, maple syrup purveyor.
It is whatever people make of it.
Pick any one of the above.
Or none of the above.
Or none of the above.
Except that I am a firm believer that when you touch somebody, it goes with them. And so, however Tennyson's Ulysses, I am a part of all that I have met. I believe that. And I think that that's how things get carried forward. There's no right way, there's no wrong way, and there's no magic to it.
Well, to follow your tracks, are we going to more likely end up in a third grade classroom or up in a sugar shack up in the woods by a lake making maple syrup?
Or at mile 25 of a marathon feeling like you want to throw up.
Well, Alan, after 50 years, I finally got to meet you and get up close and personal. One of my bucket lists, we checked one off.
Checked one off.
I hope you'll subscribe to our podcast, check out our videos, resources, and related news stories, and send us your Nextrack stories to our website, www.nextracks.tv.